Very good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's uLaw webinar. Today's webinar is not accredited for any CPD credits, but we're really hoping that you can get a lot out of today's webinar as we're going to focus on one of the most widely used feature functionalities within the uLaw product, which is around timesheets, which surrounds and extends everything to do with time, revenue, timesheets, time management, both for yourself as a solo practitioner or for a growing law firm for yourself and your colleagues, and how this eventually reflects in you being able to compensate your staff and or yourself for the time spent. Okay, so we're going to certainly spend a lot of time demonstrating the capabilities, and we certainly hope this would be an informational session and a time well spent for you and your colleagues. At any given time, please do use the chat window to ask any questions that you may have with regards to today's webinar. The webinar is being recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel as early as Monday, Tuesday of next week. The title for today's webinar is Timesheets and Capital Draw, and how both of those feature functionalities kind of go hand in hand within the uLaw practice product. Like every uLaw webinar, today's webinar has a very specific agenda. We're going to spend a lot of time really understanding the timesheet and the functionality of the timesheet and the various different options that you have as a law firm or a legal firm utilizing the uLaw product to generate these timesheets. We'll also take a step back before generating the timesheets as to where the information comes from that goes into these documents. So how a very subliminal act of adding a docket, whether that's billable time, flat rate, or otherwise, automatically gets integrated into these reports, how they reflect the time planned, the time spent, as well as the revenue that that time spent has resulted in by individual employees within a firm, that further translates to the overall payment that is being made to that individual. Or if this is being employment, you as the owner of the firm can truly understand the value that each of these employees bring to your firm and the revenue that they contribute to your firm. Okay, so going into understanding the revenue from partners or employees within your firm, we'll talk about how the uLaw practice product can help you deliver these documents and reports. And even for yourself, if you're a solo practitioner, keep in mind all of these documents and reports do mean a lot to you as well. Okay? So the time put in within your firm, captured in dockets, captured in the matter events for each of those matters you've created, results in the timesheet document. The timesheets document then translates into the time, money spent and earned for your firm. Then we finally talk about, how you as a firm would then make that payment, and what is the eligible amount of either draw or payments that have to be made to these partners or employees within the product. Okay? And as I mentioned, we'll talk about some of the prerequisite, which is really how you would go about docketing, the very important use of co-workers. That is a concept within uLaw that allows us to tag individuals within a firm. And what do you know? That's all we had as an agenda to talk about for today's webinar. There's, of course, more to show than for me to talk about. So without any further delay, let me go into my uLaw product demonstration. So prior to which, of course, I'd like to highlight to those who do not know about who we are, we're a Canadian company based out of Ottawa. We have a cloud-based platform that allows you to function using legal accounting, practice management features, as well as a full-fledged business accounting software that empowers legal firms to be on top of their practice, be compliant with the Law Society, as well as be very thorough and prepared for audits, both from Law Society as well as from the CRA. Okay? Let me jump now into, and we do offer a no obligation 30-day trial. If you want to check us out, please do visit our website at ulawpractice.com. I'm going to quickly shift gears from a presentation mode, and hopefully you are able to see my screen. So this is a web application, and I've just logged in, and we also have our own native apps, right, both on our Android as well as your iOS devices. Okay, I'm using the web version of it, logging using Chrome. You could be using Safari, you could be using Firefox. It is certainly compatible with these leading browsers. We're 256-bit encrypted, and we do allow and facilitate both CAPTCHA as well as the two-factor authorization for further security, both for your firm and for your client's data. So we're talking about timesheets. We're talking about how the reports and the documents that support the time spent within a firm, right? So if you really talk about the day-to-day activities within a firm, time is money. Most definitely that it holds true for legal firms. So it's important as a legal firm for you certainly to capture how that time was spent, to ensure that you learn from these reports and documents as to how best to spend that time moving forward, or if you're already doing a great job, the type of efficiencies that you can bring into these time management, appreciating and understanding how this time was spent. And last but not the least, depending on, of course, the unit rate or the rate, billable rate of the different staff members based on their experience, based on what they bring to the table, you can now define the time versus the cost to give you, of course, the overall revenue that the individual staff, yourself as the owner of the firm, probably bring on a time period basis. On a monthly basis, you can do this on a quarterly basis, weekly basis, but typically we've seen law firms doing this on a bi-weekly or a monthly basis because that really corresponds to the payment schedule that has been agreed upon with the individuals. Okay? Now this is a typical dashboard, so we're going to skip really the dashboard, but this is really a landing page. You can configure, customize this all using our settings on the top right corner. Now I'm going to first and foremost introduce the concept and one of the prerequisites, if you will, within uLaw called the concept of a co-worker. Within uLaw we have this menu called Contacts, which of course allows you to add any contact information pertaining to your firm, whether that's a client as an individual, whether that's a client as a corporation, whether that's other parties that may be involved. So if you're dealing with a family matter, you could have dependents, you could have the applicant, the respondent as different parties. So if your client is the applicant, you could have all the other parties stored as a contact within uLaw for some other features, including conflict search, including the ability to generate automated court forms within the province of Ontario. We also have the concept, very similar to adding that contact we have this concept called coworkers. So if I can draw your attention to this coworkers, which has a number 8, really means that there is, in addition to Mr. Roger Moore, who owns this law firm or legal firm, there are 8 other individuals that have been associated as co-workers. Again, keep in mind this is a playground account that I'm using, something that I use all day to day for my demos. So we'll focus our attention on some of these individuals here, like Martin Fisher maybe. Okay, so Martin Fisher is a legal assistant. He's one of the key partners or employees, however you like to look at it, contributors, and one of the key individuals that are part of this legal firm. And there's Roger Moore, who is the owner of this firm. I'm assuming paralegal or lawyer in this firm. And this is the first prerequisite to really find clarity as to who the different team players are within your firm who are going to contribute and spend time towards working for your firm, both client and non-client based. And that's how we're going to start driving timesheets, by using these individuals, their associated rates, and capturing how they have reported to have spent their time across matters and events. Okay, so that's really the first prerequisites, that you're able to add a new contact, add them to the co-workers group to begin with. Let's say you've just hired a new team member. You can go ahead and say, this is Mr. Thomas Johansson. Click Save. Of course, you can add their role. You can add their contact information, which would pretty much be your office address, or maybe in today's day and context, their specific location, home office, etc. Okay? So that's really the first step in being able to have a multi-team environment for your legal firm. And that now you can see the co-workers count being added to 9. Let's move forward with creating a client and creating a matter, and now starting to see how these different individuals may collaborate and report that time that they've spent on a matter. I'm going to now add a new contact by clicking on this button here, and instead of coworkers, I'm going to say, I'm going to add a client. And let's say this is for Rose Kirkland, so known as RK. We're going to put her address in. In Ottawa, Ontario. With the mailing address, we'll also say the source of contact, saying this came through my Facebook advertisement. Okay? And let me go ahead and click the Save button. So this is where we're actually creating a client, and now we're going to be creating a matter for that client, Ms. Rose. Okay? So once that particular client contact has been created, of course, keep in mind you can do your conflict search, you can generate your source of contact report, you can be generating quite a few other documents, envelopes or envelopes, however you pronounce it. You could be generating labels, so there's quite a few things that you can do once you've created that client. But I'm going to move forward, skip all of that for the purposes of time and keeping the concentration on today's webinar topic around timesheets, and create a matter. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the matter button and create a new file or matter. And let's say this is a real estate transaction. And you could say this is purchase of condo, or you know what, even better, let me mix this up a little better. Probably say it's a criminal. I'm just going to say DUI. That way we can kind of mix and match some billable time flat rate. Alrighty, so you've created a file, and it's RK198872. Now, depending on how you're set up with the uLaw, right? Whether you have individual logins for all of these individual contacts, or whether you're collaborating using a single user, but then collaborating within a matter. Let's start with looking at the first docket. So you have a matter event. So I'm going to avoid the whole retainer concept. I'm just going to strictly focus on time spent, time that has been documented. So in uLaw, we have our timesheets right under a calendar, which is really where we manage time. And if you click on this little down icon, I'm going to generate a timesheet. I'm going to do it for today. This is the 29th of May. And let me first start with generating a timesheet for today. And you can see not much has been done today. So let's use this as a starting point, as a blank slate, and kind of really build on top of this. As you can see, there's quite a few varieties of timesheets that you can generate, and we're going to walk through each of these. And let me also quickly draw your attention to an important document which we're going to be using later today, and that's under My Accounts. And under Other, it's called Report on Drawings. And I'll do this for the month of May. Once again, trying to give you a summary of what's been done. You can see no drawings have been listed, meaning no one has really drawn money out of the business towards their individual names. Okay, so this is another blank slate for you to keep in mind. So no timesheets for today, really no drawings for the month of May. Now let's go back to our matter, and let's start with Rose Kirkland. I'm going to start with Ms. Roger Moore, or you know what, let's start with the assistant. So we have this tab within Matter, and I'll draw your attention to it, called the Rate tab. If I were to click on it, this is where we allow you, as a legal firm, to associate the various different rates and how it's associated with the various different individuals who are going to participate in the docketing within this matter. We already know Roger Moore, who's the primary owner, or it could be anybody in the firm for that matter. For the purpose of today's demo and using this particular setup, we consider Roger Moore to be the primary L1 or lawyer 1, right? Now this is where you can actually introduce the concept and associate those names that we added within our contacts. If you notice, there was Martin Fisher, and I'm going to say Martin Fisher is assistant 1, and we know that his rate is set at a default $75, all of that coming from our settings. Let me go ahead and say Magneto is my L2. My L1 rate is $400 for Roger Moore, and the second lawyer involved in this matter is being charged not at $200, but it's say $300. And I will click Save. The minute you click Save, what uLaw does is it associates Martin Fisher and Magneto as the two additional resources at their corresponding per hour rates as participants or co-workers who are now going to be part of that. And now it's time to docket the time and effort, which gets recorded, and the story almost like a biography gets written into these different documents, right? As the story happens, as the transactions occur, those transactions are written and the story is being written. Let me backdate this, or in fact, let me start for today. I'll say this starting at 9 a.m. There was a initial client intake process. Okay, so initial phone call, time to deliver key documents, set, scan copies, driver's license, and I'll say, actually, I'll skip that. So let's just say those are the three things that was done within that client intake. Okay, so this could be anything, right? I'm going to bulletize it, make it look pretty, hit apply, and now comes to billable time. By default, you would consider that Mr. Roger Moore is the one who's docketing this. How much of time did you actually plan to spend on it? So let's say you had planned to spend just 30 minutes, or rather, that's the actual amount of time that you may have actually spent. You spent 30 minutes, but maybe in your retainer letter or your engagement letter, you have the luxury to charge the full hour. Many times it's the other way around. You've actually spent an hour, but you only have the luxury to charge your client 30 minutes. So this really comes down to, that specific matter, your life, your style, your policies that govern that engagement letter. Okay? By default, if I were to do that at 30 minutes without really mentioning the individual that's on it, whether that's Martin or Magneto, uLaw would assume it to be Roger Moore. And that's why you can see it's $200 plus the tax at $226. Okay? Now if I go into my quick view, if I see my work in progress report for today, I hopefully should see the time spent on the DUI for Ms. Rose Kirkland. Okay? That's exactly what we did with the time spent. Now, let me take the example where it's really not Mr. Roger Moore. Let's say this was the assistant who had done that. This is where you can say this docket was actually delivered or time was spent by A1, where you can see the change in color. And I'll say, just for the heck of it, we spent 30 minutes and we charged 30 minutes, taking the $75 rate. Of course, you can change these rates as you feel fit. You can override them for this specific matter. Now, representing 30 minutes is no more at $400 an hour. It's considered at $100 an hour, and that's why it's $50 plus tax. So that's L1. I'll do another docket. And let's say second meeting I will say meeting with social distancing, delivery, signed copies. Okay, I'm just going to leave it at that. This time I'll say we spent an hour. Once again, if I do not mention explicitly that this is someone else other than the primary practitioner here, it's going to consider the $400 rate for Roger Moore. So I will then click this link and I'll say I could even say my legal counsel, L2 of Magneto. Where does that come from? From the rates. A1 being Martin Fisher, L2 being Magneto. I'm going to continue with my friend Martin Fisher. So now Martin, who till date had no dockets to show, suddenly has an hour and a half of billable time of effort spent on this particular Rose Kirkland DUI matter. Okay. In fact, in the first docket, he spent 30 minutes, billed 30 minutes. Second docket, spent 30 minutes, charged an hour of billable time for purposes of this particular use case or example. Going back to quick view. I'm going to say, what is the work in progress for today? Okay. Keeps adding to that. Now let me go ahead and actually generate the invoice. Because that way we can now show how the time that you have spent translates into revenue. Okay. Prior to that, okay. Invoice. I could do a pre-bill if I choose to. But again, for purposes of today's demo, I'm going to skip that for purposes of time. And I would say the invoice was also prepared by Martin Fisher. Right? So Martin put the effort in. He prepared the invoice as well. And it's dated 29th. The first was at 9 a.m. and the second was at later today. I'll skip the preview. Let me just change this to 10 a.m. Now what's important is as the time gets added or even planned, of course you would see that in your calendar too. So you can see the color difference between the primary lawyers, and each individual employee or partner can set up their own color system for their time. So if you're actually seeing this for the day, you notice those are the two pieces of time spent by the assistant, right? And where does that come from? Once again, not deviating. All of that default comes from our settings. Settings is where you could basically tell us, based on taxes and rates, or in fact calendar, the different color schemes that you want to have for each of the counsels and assistants. So you can see it's purple haze for A1, and that's what you see today. Okay? If I click on it, you know this is the Rose Kirkland initial phone conversation that was done. All right, so dockets relate into calendar events, and now that we're ready to generate an invoice, you're going to see how it also relates into timesheets and revenue. So let me go ahead and click on the invoice button, hit complete, skip the preview. Okay, I will say this was done by Martin Fisher once again, and invoice. This Let me go ahead and click on the download button. And the same time effort is reflected very importantly in the document that you would now send to your client, clearly illustrating, if you choose to, who rendered that work. So it was the initial client intake, clearly illustrating the unit cost per hour for that individual who participated. Now, you may not want this level of detail in an invoice, and again, that's very much configurable within your settings. It clearly indicates the hour and a half worth of effort and the money spent. Okay, so this is an invoice that you would send to your client. Now, you as the owner, at the end of the day, may really want to understand the time and effort that's gone in today's billable time. That's where the concept of timesheets come in, where you're generating a basic timesheet. So we'll start with the basic timesheet, and I'll show you what that looks like for today. Okay. And you can see when we first generated this timesheet, prior to me docketing this is bank state. Now you have for the 29th of May at 9 a.m. for the Rose Kirkland DUI matter. That is this is the description of what was actually done as docketed in the description by Martin Fisher. The time that was spent or planned and the time that was billed. Okay? Once again, it summarizes the billable and the non-billable hours for the day. The estimated time was 1 hour, and the billable time is an hour and a half. Definitely profitable billing so far. Now, let's add to this mix. Go ahead and say revenue by employee for today. Of course, right now you only have Martin Fisher who's docketed, so let me show you with maybe a couple of more examples of bringing in some other co-workers and docketing their time, and then you'd be able to appreciate it further. Now this is the revenue by employee. So the same doc information. You've got the client intake, description, estimated time, billable time, but now you have an additional column called revenue. So based on the 30 minutes spent, that was the revenue generated for the firm. So you as the owner can really appreciate the time, effort, and the money that this individual Martin has brought to your firm for this specific day. So this is the summary that you probably really want to focus on: the service provider name, estimated time, billable time, and the revenue. Okay? Then we say you could do a timesheet by employee as well, because this would then group it by the different individuals in that day. And there's a client and service summary. And this is actually a very interesting document that pretty much outlines. Imagine this was a firm that had multiple co-workers all contributing, and may not even have to be for the same matter. This could be at the same time multiple co-workers working on multiple files. You or someone who's that administrative personnel is looking to generate the documents at the end of a time period to give the information that they need about the time and the money spent. Okay, so if you really look at this document, it gives you that was the planned time and the billable hours. All right. Let me go ahead and add a couple of more events. This time I'll say court visit. And again, I know this doesn't make sense post-COVID. Maybe I'll not even do that court visit. Okay. Online Zoom meeting. I'll say online meeting to discuss the matter in private. I'll leave it at Roger Moore now, spending an hour. At about 11 a.m. I'll add another event, and I'll say an hour was spent by Martin in follow-up conversation I'll probably just leave it at 2:45. So now you have multiple people working on the same matter. As I said, this could be multiple people working on multiple matters at the same time too. Same result. Now let me go ahead and invoice. All right. Invoice is done. Now let's go back to that timesheet. And now you'd certainly appreciate the variety in the reporting for today. Now you see there's Martin Fisher, there's Magneto, and of course there's Roger Moore too. If I would look at the service summary, you can see there's Magneto, an hour, Roger Moore for another hour and a half. So this is how time that has been docketed for effort put in by individuals within a firm gets transcribed into a timesheet that talks about time spent, as well as, most importantly, time spent, time billable time, and the time actually spent delivering that service. Okay? For the one last time, I'll go ahead and do service summary again for today. And revenue by employee as well. So this gives you a summary of lawyers, legal counsels, other paralegals in the firm, assistants, how their time has been spent. Clearly tells you the different service providers. And the final report that I'll show you from a timesheet perspective also summarizes the revenue by individual service provider. So you know, at Roger Moore, at $400 per hour, that's the revenue that they brought in. Magneto at an hour at $300 brought in that. And Martin Fisher at an hour and a half brought in the $150. Now, quite a bit of a segue, but something that we're starting to see a lot more with legal firms today. Depending on the nature of the business, your end client, especially sometimes if it's a corporate matter, they actually ask you for what's called as a leads document. I'm sure you've come across this term, LEDES, which is the legal format as a universally accepted format. And I'll show you that in a second. This is a format that allows you to send information in a universally accepted format, to send the work that's been done, the different components of the specific matter, legal electronic data exchange standard, which is an industry standard to be able to show and exchange data for specific pieces of information related to a matter. Okay? And uLaw has introduced this concept right within the matter. So as you continue to work through the matter, and if someone wants to know what the time spent was in a lead format, you don't have to migrate this, massage it, reformat it into that template. We have invested to, at a click of a button, enable our clients to be able to generate that format and send it to whoever needs this information in that specific format. Okay? So you go into that specific matter. Right at the bottom, you have the leads format. This exports the time, effort, cost, whether disbursements, other costing involved, and gives it to you in that specific format that is actually expected by leads. Okay? So again, of course, it's very complicated, but it gives you all of that information. That's another, I would say, way of reporting the time spent within a matter. So timesheet, of course, is for your own internal consumption, also for you to acknowledge the time, effort, and the revenue generated, but also now with this caveat being added for a leads format, we hope to have given you enough tools and features and functionalities for you to have a thorough understanding and reporting of the time spent within your firm. Okay? Now, we spoke about how this relates to the drawing or the payments. And I'm going to assume, let's say that we agreed, the firm agreed, that each, every partner, whatever revenue they bring to the table, that's the amount of money that they're going to draw, right? So it goes back to this revenue report, clearly saying, end of this month, that's the revenue made by each of those individual contributors. And if I really want to, for purposes of the example for today, say I want to pay Martin Fisher for the revenue he's brought in, again, I'm assuming that you're not paying an employee a salary, you're just paying a partner for the revenue they bring in based on the time they put in. That's what you're paying them. uLaw allows you to do that right within the same product. So this is where the information, so at this time, this is information. We're going to convert that information and the data that's there in that information into an action. Okay? So let's say I want to pay Martin Fisher that $150. I would go ahead and let's say drawings transfer. Today, I'm going to pay Martin Fisher drawing for the month of May of $150. This is where that information gets plugged in. That's the money he made. That's the money we owe him, or whatever is the arrangement. Coming out of the business's general account, you can choose where it comes from. method of payment. You can even print that check for Martin Fisher right from uLaw, right? You can print this off, send this to your printer, keep this as digitally possible. You don't have to handwrite this either. Now if I go back into my drawings report, do that for the month of May. If you recollect, the first report was empty. Now you have that information being captured and the story being written that for the month of May, the firm did pay Martin Fisher his $150. And if I follow suit, let's say I go ahead and pay the other gentleman, Magneto, the $300. Capital, transfer. And again, the information that you added within the coworker, including our newly joined person, Thomas Johansson, is available. But I'm going to say Magneto, drawings. And this is not $150, this was $300. Check. That is 124. Print the check. And let's pay Roger Moore as well, or yourself. This was $400 if I remember it right. And basically made the payment. Put the effort in, captured it in a timesheet, understood who spent what time, how much of time was billed, how much of money was made out of that, used that same information to pay those individuals at the end of the month or a specific term. Now if I go back to generating my drawings report for the month of May, and this is what you need to understand your expenses too. Right? What was my expense for the month of May? That includes the payment that was just made. Of course, Martin has drawn a lot more because that's the account being used. So there is 300, 150, and you pretty much wrap the month with that. There's also another document, which is client summary, revenue from a client. And you can do this for today, or you can do this for the month. It pretty much tells you each client and how much of revenue they've brought in. So this takes that time spent and translates it from the perspective of a client rather than the actual person who delivered that service. Okay, so this is a summary of the total time spent by your firm on each of those clients. So these were the top or the 10 or 8 clients, the time that was spent for each of those clients, and the revenue that was generated from each of those clients. If you look at our friend Rose Kirkland, estimated time was 2 hours, time billed was 3.5 hours, and $850 was the revenue that we've got from that client, right? 400 for Roger Moore, 300 for one of those individuals, 150 for Martin. So you now have time as corresponds to the employee, time and money as it corresponds to the client to who the time was spent. Okay? And there's, of course, variety of the data with regards to time, with regards to various different data points that are captured along the way. And that's the total revenue with the total billable hours that was spent. And now you can have a good average of what your average billable rate is for your firm. And of course, do the math if that revenue makes sense. Further, when you do your trial balance, or let's say your expense report, your profit and loss for the month, all that piece of information gets captured, gets documented, gets computed, and gets added into your P&L of total revenue, expenses for that month. Okay? So with a few more minutes left for today's webinar, I'd like to certainly open up the floor for any questions that you may have with regards to what I was able to walk you through today with regards to the timesheet itself and how various different service providers within a firm can come together to collaborate, whether within it's a single matter or multiple matters, and how that time spent directly translates into revenue, also translates into the final drawings report of how much you owe those individuals. And last but not the least, a very important feature that we've added once again when it comes to time and reporting time is the leads format, where time is an important component of that leads report. Of course, has a lot of other factors, the disbursements and the fees and everything else. But this is click a button, we're able to generate it in that leads format. So please do use the chat window at any given time to ask any questions that you may have with regards to today's webinar. I know this was a quick and easy informational session that solely focuses on how the timesheets are generated and how the prerequisites, such as co-workers, prerequisites of associating rates, and prerequisite of associating dockets with the individuals involved are important to tell the right story within those timesheets. Okay? So please feel free to use the chat window, and both myself and my support staff are more than happy to answer those questions. Okay, we do have a question around, I believe the question is around the settings and how different colors were created. Sure, I think I understand the question. So right at the top right, you have our settings, uLaw settings, and we have this tab for almost each of our menu options. And there's a tab for the option calendar. And here we have the opportunity for you to give each and every role, not the individual. In fact, uLaw allows you to associate multiple individuals for a role. So you could have Martin, the assistant. You could have Joe as the assistant as well. Each of course, having their own colors. You could say L1, both Martin and Robin could be L1, having the color called gray, assistant, and that gets reflected in the calendar. So if I were to do it for today, here's the two colors for Martin, and here's the color for Roger, which is blue, and I believe the new gray was for L2. Okay, that's how the colors are determined. You can actually click on it as well. Okay, another question around where do I generate the timesheets from? It's under calendar, clicking on this little down arrow and clicking on the action button. And you see it under calendar. Interestingly enough, we also have a very recent report under our quick view that tells you the invoice pending, which gives you an idea if there are any invoices that are outstanding. For that particular day or time period. There's a quick question. I'm not sure if it was pertaining to today's webinar, whether the logo and the banner would have to be the exact same sizes. The way we introduce or allow you to integrate that, especially if you're looking at invoices, so let me just generate an invoice, or I'll do a repeat of that same invoice. So let me reprint this, and I'll show you an example of a default theme. So anything in uLaw that is about the uLaw theme incorporates your own logo as well as a banner or letterhead. And I can show you what that looks like. So if you look at this particular invoice, the top part here is the letterhead, and you could have it with the address, without the address. In addition to the letterhead or the banner, we also have the placeholder for a logo for your business. Some legal firms just have the logo. Some firms have just the letterhead. Some firms have both. And they do not have to be the same size. What we do is, if you can send us your logo and banner at no extra charge, uLaw resizes the letterhead as well as the banner and sends you back the size that would fit within that invoice or any other documents that you may have, including your engagement, retainer letters, all of those client-facing documents. And you can just upload that under personalized logo and the banner, otherwise the letterhead, and you can have both these. And we've also given you recommended sizes, so you can even send it to us or upload it if you believe that the logo and the banner are either 300 by 110 pixels or 800 by 50 pixels. Hopefully that answered that question. So where were the rates associated? Now there are two areas where you can associate the rates. Okay, one at the settings level, where you have taxes and rates, where you set all of your default costs. And this is where you can set your assistant. This is what we consider as the A1, the assistant. Let's assume just a firm with an individual and an assistant, right? Then you may have your default cost, the individual, Roger Moore in this case, at $400, and Roger Moore's assistant, Martin, at $75. And that's what gets copied over. But then if you come further down, you can also associate the other set of rates for L2, L3, L4, F5, and an additional 4 other assistants. So you can have up to 5 lawyers, 5 assistants being set up. And once you have those defaults set, within a matter, you use the Rate tab. And you can use this to even override it. So unless you've not invoiced this matter yet, you can always override those default costs on a matter-to-matter basis. Okay, this is where you associate Magneto and Martin and their individual rates. And finally, you associate those rates and the individuals within the doc. Okay? So again, thank you very much for joining me today. That's pretty much a wrap for today's webinar. I really hope this was an informational, quick snippet and an explanation of our timesheet feature and how it actually relates to all the work and effort that you put in on a day-to-day basis. So if you haven't been generating these reports, hopefully this is a good session and an informational one for you to do so. So I will thank everyone for joining me, and we'll look forward to seeing you in our next webinar next Friday at 2 p.m. Thank you very much.